In terms of the situation in Trinidad and Tobago with violent crimes against women, because we really have seen a bit of an upsurge.
I hate talking about this.
No, but the point I was going to make is you can kind of refer to the first part of the podcast, because the reality is, and I've always said this, no matter what it might be, if they have crime, eventually it will end up against women too, and children. That is the nature of things. When you have plenty of anything, it starts to spread across. It starts to reach everybody, right? It's not a good thing, obviously, but we need to address the crime situation on a whole, and then
I understand, and the thing is, I agree, and that's why I hate talking about this, because there are people who are determined to turn this into to deal with even the term gender-based violence. It suggests that the violence wouldn't take place if the person was of a different gender. That's what you say when you say gender-based violence. In other words, had the gender of the person is crucial, right? Had the person been another gender, the crime would not have taken place, right? Or the violence would not have taken place. I don't know that that's true in many of these instances. I don't know that there are people who are generally and otherwise calm, level-headed individuals who only get violent when they encounter somebody of another gender. And they get violent because the person is of another gender, not just that the person is weaker than them.
Right. So, all right. I think in certain instances that would be true, right? So, like things like rape.
I'm not talking about sexual crimes.
Right. So, right. So those things, right?
Right.
Which, well, as I say, because we have the topic of the Ketisha situation recently, a lot of people go, when they say that, people go kind of, if you understand what I'm saying, they would try to cross the two. And so I want to make sure that we're not talking about what you're saying is not speaking about that particular situation.
I don't even know what happened in that situation.
Well, the thing is, remember, she went missing, and they found her body in...
Right, yeah, I know that, but I know nothing about any supposed, what they suppose might have been the cause.
But they say her genitals were mutilated, her head was shaven. The thing is, they were saying that it was some quote-unquote friend that was stalking her or something like that. And up to now, nobody didn't say what going on with the friend. I don't know. I mean, her family and whatnot came to social media, her friends or whatever the case may be, to talk about justice, but we still didn't hear about the friend. So I don't know if they have other evidence to prove that it wasn't that person who they thought. And well... Yeah, so...
No, but... And listen, and I always get in trouble for this, but who gives a shit? When we talk about gender-based violence, right, and tackling it and it alone, then it means that we have, that whatever methods we're using are channeled directly towards stopping what causes violence against that gender. In other words, if we're not just talking about what stops people from acting violently, period. What stops people from doing, from becoming, mentally ill or violent or dangerously mentally ill. You know what I mean? We're not talking about that. We're talking about, okay, it is specific to why do people, so in other words, if you committed that act, would you have committed that act if the person, or a similar act if the person was not of that gender and was not weaker than you? In other words, I'm trying to skate around the issue here, but I'll just come out plain and simple. Most crime of that nature happens because the person who is the aggressor has the opportunity to aggress against somebody that is they believe to be weaker than them. It is not likely that that person would not display the same type of behavior if forced to against a weaker man or a child. Most wife beaters are children abusers too. Why? Because it's a dominance thing. And in their mind, this particular individual is weaker than them. Now you could say, well, maybe that is the case because they perceive women to be weaker than them. Okay, then how do we address that? Right? Because if for that to be addressed, it will more be us working on the women than the men. Because if we empower women and we make women present themselves as not victims to these individuals, then that is immediately going to bridge the divide.
I disagree with that, no way.
But then how else would we address it if that's the case?
I think we have a lot of damaged men who have a certain degree of resentment towards women for, I guess, some of the things they went through in life. Whether it be not being heard, whether it be being mistreated, even far back as parenthood trauma, you know, coming from their mother, their auntie, or whatever the case may be, bigger sister, and they're unable to control their emotions, you know, sometimes in some situations, like, so, especially with domestic violence situations, right? And probably even some rape situations. And I think...
You are talking about specific situations that individuals go through, right? How do we address that?
Well, this is why I think a lot of work needs to be done on men, or I don't want to say on men, but I think, and because I am not one of the people who like to blame men for what's happening. You understand what I'm saying?
I get where you're going.
Right? But I do think that there are some damaged men out here who commit these crimes, and I think that damage comes from how society treats men. Some men will obviously could like water off dog back for them and be okay men and function within society. Some don't. Some turn into those kind of people. And
okay, what do you think that there are a great deal of people who are walking around there damaged and take it out only on women, or are much more likely to take it out on women than men? Now, I'm not saying there aren't individuals. I mean, do you think that is if
it's a majority?
If we're dealing with a situation with a lot of damaged individuals who are only seeking to take out their, because, I mean, you could always find an individual who has something specific with him.
Right.
You know, you could develop some sort of sociopathy or whatever because of treatment meted out to you specifically by a specific kind of person, and you kind of transfer that to other people. But that's not something society can necessarily deal with. There's no policy that you could put in place to deal with that. But I'm talking about on a general level, like what we see happening out there. You think there's a large number of men who are damaged and seeking to take or more likely to take out their anger on women and women alone.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, I mean, I haven't conducted a scientific poll, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't believe it, but if you think that's a situation.
Yeah, boy. I feel so. Based on some people I know, and then you hear about a situation and how they respond to the situation and how they react in the situation towards a woman or whatever the case may be. I'd be like, and then you look back in their situation, how they live, how they grow, some things they went through in life, you'd be like,
and they are out there seeking to exact revenge on women.
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that they're out there seeking to do it, but when they have a lot of difficulty dealing with negative emotions when it comes to women,
but they're okay dealing with it when it comes to men.
Yeah,
and those are people you think would likely to become violent.
Yeah,
or could become violent.
Yeah. I don't know if they reach as far as killing a woman, but then again, if they could become violent, then.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't personally, I don't believe that. But I'm not saying you're wrong. If you understand what I'm saying, because your opinion is no more valid. Understand me? It's not like I went around scientifically studying people. I just get the impression that what we have is a society where violence as a solution has been kind of co-signed by too many people.
Right.
Because when I think about it, I think that we have not become a more misogynistic society over time.
Right.
Right? If anything, we would have improved. Yeah, at most you could argue we have not improved, but I don't think we could say 50 years ago we had a situation where we had much more respect for women and men had much more, a much greater ability to handle women being in dominant positions or anything. But now it's different. If anything, we've gotten better in that way. But crimes against women have not. but crime in general has gotten worse.
Right. So the thing is, I agree with what you're saying, right? And this is what I don't think is a matter of, because the way people is push it, as I say, people is push it as if it have men out here just want to be violent towards women. I don't think it's a matter of that. I think it's men who are unable to control their emotions.
Right.
And probably because, as I say, the weaker person might be a woman. So
or they perceive the weaker person to be a woman. Yes.
Right? But and when you say weaker, we're talking about physically weaker, right?
Yeah. Well, some of them might even feel mentally weaker.
Right. Yeah. So the thing is, a man get them vexed, they might get vexed and walk off.
Right.
But if they have an issue with their person,
right. Exactly. They will quicker reach to fisticuffs.
Right.
Or violence in general because they perceive that person as weaker.
Right.
And that's why they tend to behave the same way with children. They tend to be abusers of everybody in the home, not just the mommy. And it's because what they have is all sorts of things going on in their head. And when I say the work shouldn't be done on men, I'm not saying that men have no work to do, you know. But what I'm saying is, if it is what we have is a situation where women are being victimized because they are perceived as being as weaker by men, well then what we should be doing a lot more of is focusing on women, not presenting them, because we can't have the conversation that men need to stop watching women as weaker than them, but then constantly speak about women as if they're vulnerable. In fact, the Attorney General referred to women as vulnerable the other day. And my thing was, wait, I thought we were trying to do away with that. I thought what the new world order was, women are just as strong, just as, forward, just as, so why aren't we taking this from the perception, from the angle of, listen, you commit crimes against anybody, we will hunt you down, arrest you, and make you feel the firm arm of the law. And when it comes to women are not overwhelmingly the majority of victims when it comes to violent crime in general, and as far as I'm aware, murder as well. So men are more make up the larger portion of victims. So to describe women in this way as if they are a group that is there to be preyed upon by men, I think all you do is reinforce the idea that women need protection.
Right.
You understand? And specific protection.
But I mean...
as if they're children.
But that's what is asked for in situations like this. Now, let me
give you... But we can't have the double standard. Right. That's the problem.
But let me give you a different angle, though. And I mean, we're running jet on time. But anyway, it's probably just two more things. Last one might be long. But anyhow. Now, can we say that most... like when they hear plenty of them fellas get gunned down, you would hear they were known to the police, you would hear that they had some sort of gang affiliation, you would hear all these different stories, right? This person had so much and so much charges and whatever, right? But if you were to minus those cases, right, and just look at the situations where it was a random altercation and it ended in the death of the person, don't you think, I mean, obviously we're not checking the statistics as we speak in here now, but do you think then the ratio would look much closer in terms of women being
well, yeah, murdered? I mean, if you took away gang-related murders, then the ratio would obviously be closer because more men are murdered in gang-related events.
Well, right, so, but no, that's why, and is that why that touches, because it's very easy when it might be wrong to some extent, when you're watching news and you see a fellow with his head plat up so, and whatever, he get gunned down, and the pants was down by below the bottom, and it's well,
no, I know where you're going with this, but there's a 15-year-old boy who died this weekend, right? We've had situations where young fellas were killed, and we don't know, and there hasn't been, the schoolboy who burned to death in Pashi Street a few years ago.
When they shoot up the car.
Right. Where they couldn't tie the youth men to the actual gang. There wasn't any evidence that they were the shooters or they were involved in anything like that. But there was still no uproar. There was still, and that was a minor. There was a 15-year-old killed this week. 15-year-old. As far as I could tell, he just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right, but the thing is, watch how they put out that story. Well, one of the places, I can't remember which article I saw, right? But I remember the story and opening the story, and the first picture you saw was a fella with real big gold, a big slave band, right? And in Trinidad and Tobago, a lot of the time we tend to tie the big gold and big slave band to nefarious activity.
I hear what you're saying, but
as we're saying, now we're dealing with public perception, eh?
Right. Yeah.
So public perception, 15-year-old kill amongst 3 others, and they put the picture of this person. Now they could have put a picture of the 15-year-old looking innocent in a school uniform, but they put this person. So I don't know if they put that person to make it look like, well, boy, them fellas had to be in something, or he was liming people who was in something. So that's why, you understand what I'm saying? I don't know, but I'm saying public perception, right? And so you're thinking about the normal person, the average person who just get up and go to work and they're not involved with them, they don't really deal up. So when they see things like that, they be like, well, the reason that happens is because of them and their thing. So now, when you do so and you see a woman going and drop her children, the woman who went at somewhere this week, she left her woman, she got killed in the car.
But that I mean,
we don't know the story. We still don't know the story.
But there hasn't been the same outcry regarding that one.
Right.
Because I think that one looked a little bit different.
Right. So, no, but what I'm saying, I think some women...
she was by herself. She had just left the house and they flagged on the car and shot her and killed her. Yeah.
So, then you come and you get the situation with Katisha, because I think these things, a lot of people start to think like, that could have been me now, boy. And I think that is where the outcry comes.
What it is that we view women in the same way that we view children. We view them as vulnerable and worthy of protection. And that's why we feel it in the same way we feel it when a child dies. We don't see them. And my only thing with that is we have to make up our minds. Are they that, or are they equal to men? And if that is what they are, then we and I'm not saying to not care about them, but what I'm simply saying is we cannot tell our young girls two stories at the same time. You all are strong, powerful, just deserve a seat at the table just as men, but then when something happens to you, we're going to show more emotion and at the AG called them vulnerable when in talking about the law for the pepper spray and whatever, that we have to vulnerable groups. So women are vulnerable. So what is it? So they can't at the same time be victims and victors. They can't be. You understand what I'm saying? So we have to make it clear we could make a stance against violence of all sorts, and we could take a stance against domestic violence. We could take all those things, but we cannot at the same time. We can't tell the two stories at the same time, that they are just as strong and powerful and capable and worthy of respect as men, but then we seem to we then betray ourselves when we betray that pretense when we then act as if they are children and worthy of a certain type of protection.
I think they would argue, or people would argue, that they could be as strong mentally, as strong financially, but because of their physical makeup, they're just not strong. They're not strong physically. So that is why men need to protect them physically.
Well, listen, I have no problem with telling men they need to protect women, and I would urge any man to protect any woman that they feel they need to protect. In other words, your friend, your family, friend. I have no problem with that. But what I'm saying is that we can't. That is what you just described there is not something that is allowed to be shown on TV anymore. You can't see any movie, in particular Walt Disney movie, where there's a damsel in distress and anything that kind of supports the notion that women need to be protected by men. Right? Because it has been decided that is something, that idea, the perpetuation of that idea is what has led to men feeling that they have dominion over women. So we're cutting that out. No problem. Just let me know what the rules are and I'll play by the rules. So that's the rules, no issue. But then we can't at the same time, while we're saying that, act as if we could see a fight on video between two men and be like, well, that man get beat up and laugh. But if we see a man swing a fist behind a woman, all of a sudden that's a crime against humanity. What is it? Is it that they are on equal standing and therefore we treat all situations the same? Now, we generally have a distaste for violence, right? We don't encourage violence in general, but we don't have a public outcry and a protest for every man that's murdered, every innocent man that's murdered, or supposedly innocent man that's murdered, right? There are several, yes, we have gang-related murders, but there are several. Just the other day, a colleague of mine's brother, Rahman, the guy who owned the pharmacy in Pittsburgh, was shot and killed. Family man.
In Pity Valley?
Yeah, in Pity Valley, yeah. Family man, wife and children. From what I understand, they abroad and they were waiting him to join them over there. They no longer have a pillar in their world, you know what I mean? And a good fella in general. But there's no outcry. Nobody, the world doesn't need to stop for him.
But the thing is, right? And I want to wrap up this topic soon, but the not to cut your point.
Yeah. I understand.
I think also one of the things we tend to do a lot here, because obviously in some groups and things you would see, you saw the situation, you saw some pictures come out and whatnot, and a lot of people question was put specifically with that person. Nah, man, he had to be in something, boy. Let me go swing on him just so, right? You understand what I'm saying? And is it that once men get murdered, we think they had to be in something?
And all of that is part of my point. That is something that we cannot, that kind of attitude that we take towards men's murders, we can't do that with women. If you did that, you would be castigated. Somebody would be like, hey, how you could make that assumption? You understand? If you hear of a woman getting raped and you say out loud or even in your mind, once people know that you think about it, well, what she was really doing there. Would that be acceptable? Would that be something that we as a society say is okay? No, we don't. We say, no, can't do that. You have to treat every individual as, as far as you could tell. No, and more than whether he was in something or not. The point is, that was an individual who was a father to somebody and a husband to somebody and who's now gone. Right? And it's a tragic situation, a situation that if you think about it, it tugs at the same heartstrings that it should tug at if you hear about a young woman, going missing and ending up and turning up dead. I
think which brings me back to the topic before. Or we were talking about, I think one, people, they don't value men. And I think,
right.
But if you start to see people valuing men more, I think you would see some sort of change in behavior of men. I think so. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not saying all.
Yeah.
But I think.
And so all of these things, this is what having an honest conversation about these things really means. What people say they want to have an honest conversation about this is like, hey, we as women, so hush your mouth and let we tell you all of the ways we vex and all the ways you have wronged us and all the things you must do now to behave and act accordingly. That's what normally happens when people say they want to have an honest conversation about these kinds of things. But in reality, we have to end up, so is it, what do we really want? Are we?
So you're willing to have Womantra on? Or somebody from Womantra?
I am willing to talk to anybody who wants to have, in good faith, a conversation about these things.
A respectful conversation, most of all.
It don't have to even be respectful, but it has to be in good taste. In good, not just in good taste, but in good faith.
Oh, no, that'd be respectable. If you're disrespecting, it's real hard for me not to disrespect.
No, I could deal with that.
I could. So that got to be on you.